Before there was Our Lady of Lourdes and Our Lady of Fatima, there was Our Lady of the Pines, otherwise known as Our Lady of Siluva. Lithuania was the last European nation to accept Christianity, but there was a time when Lithuania was very close to leaving the Catholic Church, and it would take something big to bring it back. Rather than something disastrous, God chose to send His mother to remind the people of the town of Siluva, Lithuania, to return to their Catholic faith, which had been nearly overtaken by the Reformation heresy that was sweeping over Europe. Siluva had at one time been very Catholic. The establishment of a church in Siluva was the initiative of a nobleman named Petrus Gadagas, who worked in the service of Vytautas the Great. In 1457, Gadagas bought the land and gave it to the Catholic Church and built a church in the honor of Our Lady. On one of his trips to Rome, he bought a beautiful and magnificent painting of Our Lady and the Child Jesus and brought it back to hang in the sanctuary of the new church. For many years, the people of Siluva worshipped and praised God there in the church, flourishing in their faith. Then, in 1532, 75 years after the church was built, the Protestant Reformation took over Europe. The local governor also became a Calvinist, forcing his beliefs on the people. This, in turn, influenced the people of nobility and intellectuals, who then began to influence the lower class and less educated. Soon, the village of Siluva became predominantly Calvinist, and anything Catholic was seized, handed over, or burned to the ground. When the parish priest, Father Halubka, heard that their church would be burned to the ground, he built an iron-clad box and put all the treasures of the church inside, including the painting of the Blessed Virgin and the Child Jesus, vestments, and deeds of the ownership of the land. Then he sealed the box closed and buried it in the ground near the church by a rock. This had been inspired by God because, as the priest had feared, the church was seized and burned to the ground. Over the years, the practice of the Catholic religion died out. 80 years passed, and new children were born, brought up in the Calvinist beliefs. Only a few of the older folks even remembered that once there had been a Catholic church in their village. But God was watching and soon acted to remind the people of their Catholic roots. He would send His mother to clean up the mess that had been created by the people, and He sent her to the ones who would be the most open of all. Not the intellectuals or noble people, not even the lower class people, but to their children. In the year 1608, a group of children were playing near a large rock, close to a wooden section near the field. Suddenly, they heard what sounded like a woman weeping. The weeping didn't sound like just any woman, but like someone who was truly sad. It was impossible to ignore. Stopping their play, the children looked around and followed the sound to find a beautiful young woman standing on a large rock, holding a baby. They stared spellbound at this woman who was looking at them so sadly. She was dressed in a way that no other village woman was dressed, with a blue garment and a white robe that floated around her. Her hair was light brown and fell softly over her shoulders. A beautiful light surrounded the woman and the baby. She didn't speak, but looked at the children with such a sadness that pierced their hearts. And then she disappeared. The children were at first startled, but then ran to tell the Calvinist pastor what they had seen. A few of the older boys told him in great detail about the woman and the baby, but the pastor thought they were making stories up to tease the younger ones, told them to stop it and to go play. Unable to shake what they had seen, and without discussing it among themselves, the children told their parents later that evening, and as the parents realized that each of their children had seen the same thing and told everything in the same detail, the news spread throughout the village. The next morning, many parents gathered around the rock where the woman and the child had appeared. Some thought the whole thing ludicrous, while others were a little more thoughtful. When the pastor came from his study, he was alarmed that so many people believed what he called a Roman superstition. He began to preach at them, telling them that this was most certainly the work of the devil, when suddenly they heard the sound of weeping not too far behind him. They turned around toward the sound, where they found the same woman and child, and exactly as the children had described her. As before, she was beautiful and unlike any woman that they had ever seen, with a strange white glow surrounding her. She was crying, just as she had the day before, with sobs that hurt the soul just to hear them. The people stood in shock as they stared at the beautiful woman, and finally the minister found his voice and asked the woman why she was crying. The woman looked sorrowfully at him and replied, "There was a time when my beloved son was worshipped by my people on this very spot, but now they have given this sacred soil over to the plowman and the tiller and to the animals for grazing." Without another word, she vanished. The people and the minister were left to try to absorb what had happened and the words that she had spoken. The belief that the Mother of God had appeared in person to chide them for their neglect of the Catholic faith quickly grew among the people. Most of the people heeded her message and began to return to the one true church founded by her divine Son, Jesus Christ. So complete was this return that a decade later, on the feast of the Nativity of the Blessed Virgin Mary, more than 11,000 people received Holy Communion during a Mass offered at the scene of the apparitions. The bishop appointed Father John Kazakavicius to investigate the phenomenon and question all witnesses to the events. The news of the investigations of the apparitions spread throughout and beyond Siluva, where an old man of 100 years old heard of them. He was blind in his old age, but he remembered something very important that the people of Siluva would want to hear. He recalled a night some 80 years before when he had helped Father Halubka bury an iron-clad chest filled with church treasures beneath a large rock. Upon hearing this, the villagers helped him and led him to the field of the apparitions to see if he could help locate the place where the treasures were still buried. Upon reaching the apparition site in the rock, he suddenly and miraculously regained his sight. Overcome with joy and now able to see, he was able to point out the exact location of the iron-clad chest that was buried 80 years ago. Upon opening it, they found the vestments, the chalices, church deeds, and the painting of Our Lady and the infant Jesus. Now, with the original documents of ownership of the church found, the people had the proof that the land was theirs. A small wooden church was built where Our Lady appeared to give her honor. And as popularity grew, a larger church was built in 1641. A basilica now stands in its place with the beautiful painting of Our Lady of Siluva. The Catholic faith once again thrived, and many churches have been built in Siluva. Unfortunately, the devotion slackened when World War II brought about the destruction of the freedom in Lithuania. Our Lady of Siluva, or Our Lady of the Pines, needs to be recognized and honored again. Her message still holds strong for all of us today, for those who struggle in the Catholic faith and for those who left it. Like and share this story so that we all can know of Our Lady of Siluva. She brought Lithuania back to the church, and she can do this for us as well. Prayer to Our Lady of Siluva. O Most Holy Virgin Mary, you who did appear to the shepherds in the fields of Siluva, whose tears bathed the rock where an altar once stood, in a plaintive voice you said, "You plow and seed here where formerly my son was honored. Grant that we, moved by your tears, may, once as our forefathers did, revive the spirit of adoration of your Son in our hearts, and strengthen the tottering structure of the shrine which is the family, and seek forgiveness of our negligence and sins.